Hi, everyone. This is Steve Powell, and welcome to my Retired Techie podcast. This is episode 3, and today is September 14th. Today's post is a unique one because Marcia and I are fresh off our 40th year high school reunion last night here in Bellevue, Washington. We are at her childhood home, and those of you following along may notice that I'm recording from Marcia's childhood bedroom. And no, this is not a fake background. Right now, Marcia is out to coffee with a friend, so I have the run of her bedroom as a podcast studio for a little while to record. This reunion was the first we've been to in 20 years. The last one we went to was our 20th reunion back in 2005 that was held at Safeco Field, now T-Mobile Park, where the Seattle Mariners play. We had to miss our 30th reunion back in 2015 because our kids were in the Water Polo Junior Olympics that year. So as dedicated parents, we are down in Southern California watching our kids. At the request of a couple of people from my high school who happen to subscribe to this Substack, I'm going to dedicate this post to my top 10 list of reunion reflections. So here goes with my top 10 in no particular order. Number 1, we had an impressive turnout. Out of a class of about 420 people, there were 106 that prepaid, and only 6 didn't actually show up. There were another 15 registrations at the door, so we had over a quarter of the people there. Not bad for 40 years later, particularly with how busy everyone's lives are in the modern era. I was particularly impressed with those who traveled far to come. In our case, when we went to the 20th reunion, we were actually already living in the area. For this one, we only had a 3-hour drive from Portland to Bellevue. I send gratitude to everyone who traveled far and wide to make this such a unique experience. It's funny that 4 years ago, Marcia's brother had about 130 people at their 40-year reunion in a similarly sized class. Perhaps our high school is unique. If you had either a similar or vastly different experience at your reunions, I'd love to hear about this in the comments. Number 2, seeing people triggered old memories that I hadn't thought of in years. Seeing one woman made me remember about the time she brought her favorite rat to school. She tried once putting that rat on my shoulder. I shrieked, freaking out the rat and making it pee all over my shirt. I hadn't thought about that in years. Maybe I blocked it out, but seeing her from afar immediately brought it to mind. Talking with another classmate totally reminded me of when he was the MC for a talent show at school. That was back when Michael Jackson was so popular, and he told everyone that he was going to show them how he does the moonwalk. So he turned, took the position of Michael Jackson doing a moonwalk, and then broke into a funny Neil Armstrong low gravity walk. Funny play on words. Even funnier is that seeing some people even triggered memories from way before high school. Seeing one person made me think not more of recent times, but instead of the times when we played on a boys club basketball team when we were all in elementary school. If there are any weird memories you'd like to share, I'd love to hear about them. Number 3. Enrichment programs made for closer relationships. I thought it was funny when we gathered a subset of us for a group photo that went through advanced learning programs from elementary school and junior high. While many of us went off to different social groups in high school, I think we all shared a bond by being in so many classes together in our early years. This is the crew. It's funny that one of the males made a snarky comment to one of the females, basically editorializing on her sorority girl vibe. Offended, she said, "Is that what you remember of me?" And then, acknowledging the humor, she admitted, "Actually, I was the sorority president." I love it when people can laugh about themselves and our situations. Let me know in the comments if you've had any similar stories to laugh about. Number 4. Social stigmas erode after 40 years. While there were definitely some cliques in high school, I think it's funny how these things can fade away after 40 years. Obviously, we have stronger memories with those we spent more time with. And even last night, Toward the end of the evening, I gravitated toward the childhood friend who grew up across the street from me. Early subscribers to this Substack may recall my post about the 5-hour call we had several months ago. Still, I found it cool to be able to chat with and learn from some people that I might have spoken with more last night than in probably my entire senior year of high school. I was in the same school district from the first grade on, so I knew many of the kids from earlier years. But somehow, by senior year, I think the number of people I interacted with had fallen quite dramatically. It was nice to feel a bit of a reset on this. I'd be interested to hear from any of you who get what I mean here. Number 5, there were two common themes of conversation. One, the death or aging of parents, and two, retirement or retirement planning. Both Marcia and I have older siblings, so in many cases we are ahead of our peers. Marcia is in the club of orphans, where both of her parents have already passed, and she and her brother are no longer anyone's children. I, on the other hand, am in a club of a child who had to live through a parent having dementia and then an eventual passing. It's funny that even though my parents weren't that involved in the school, I had classmates that do remember my mom and how she was always so nicely dressed. Even then, perhaps, she was destined to one day become the social media personality that she's reluctantly become. One classmate in particular remembered my mom's cooking from a school auction where mom donated a prepared Chinese meal. On retirement, the conversations really had two different flavors. With other retired people, we could jointly reflect on how awesome it is. For those who have not yet retired, they seem sort of eager to do it, but also had the common question of, what do you do with your time? Do you travel? To that, I've had to use my common expression, actually, I just dick around. Still, there's a genuine puzzlement that people get to here. So I would eventually fall back to our travels, my consulting gigs, and so forth. Some actually asked about investing activity. But for the most part, I'm not sure I was really at the place where I was ready to fully share the journey in this kind of casual conversation. I'm curious from all of you whether you found any other common conversation themes from these types of reunion events. Number 6, it was easier to recognize the women from afar than the men. There were definitely a few exceptions of men who basically looked simply like an older version of their high school selves. But most looked different. And it's not in a way like the stereotypes of people looking terrible as they age. I would say there were many men who were aging produced an even more sophisticated look, but just different. However, what really impressed me was the women who stayed on brand with their hairstyles and overall looks. There were a great many classmates whom I could identify from afar. And even then, name tags were actually a distraction because I couldn't recognize married last names very well. Somehow, their maiden names popped right into my head. It was also nice that the people in our class looked very natural. It's not like Hollywood celebrities like Sandra Bullock, who basically look exactly the same. There was some nice and graceful aging going on here. Moreover, honorable mention goes to a classmate who transitioned from a woman to a man. Even though we were both in the advanced learning programs in our school and had a number of classes together, I didn't recognize him at all until I identified himself. However, in this case, I didn't feel bad because that was the intent. Is my experience typical? The intellectual side of me thinks that perhaps there really is something to modern fitness and nutrition routines which make the 58-year-old of today very different from the 58-year-old from our childhoods. The funny thing is that one of my childhood friends is close to running as fast as he did in high school and has been asking everyone to check in with him at every subsequent reunion to hold him accountable to keeping up the track work. Number 7, some comments don't age well. One of the things I did with all of our moving between homes is that I shredded my high school yearbooks. Not only did I want to stop lugging them around in unopened boxes, I didn't want my kids to read the stuff that friends and old girlfriends wrote in my yearbooks at the time. Now, I'm also realizing that even my own comments didn't age well over time. One of our classmates brought her yearbook from senior year. She made a point of showing me what I wrote, telling me how nice it was and how she appreciated it. When I read it, I was horrified. For context, this was a girl that never really got dressed up or wore makeup. And when she came to prom, it felt like a transformation, like the Princess Diaries. I wrote in her yearbook how nice she looked and encouraged her to do more of the same. I completely forgot I wrote that, but I realized in 2025, these comments didn't age well. Reflecting on this last night, I told her how my daughters might be horrified to read these comments. And she admitted in hindsight that perhaps hers would too. However, she also fully recognized that 1985 was a different time and that she had thought that what I wrote was very nice back then. She then made a funny analogy to something later in life. She became a doctor, and one of the older doctors who worked with her used to say to the female doctors that you really need a housewife. She explained that he was really acknowledging how the profession required having a very valuable partner at home, and he was acknowledging the struggles that female doctors faced at the time with the traditional patriarchal roles in a marriage. However, despite these good intentions, the actual phrasing of needing a housewife didn't age well. I think I'm still trying to process this analogy. Number 8, Asian invasion. One of the funniest conversations we had was about the number of Asians at our schools now. For context, when our family first moved to our neighborhood, the only Chinese kids in my grade were me and Robert Liu. Our family moved there because the public school district was very good. And it turns out other Asian families got the memo. Today, my old elementary school is over 70% Asian. The middle school is over 65% Asian, and the high school is over 55% Asian. And that doesn't even count the multiracial kids who might be part Asian. What's funny is that while everyone expects the high school band to be Asian, people didn't really expect the football players and the cheerleaders to be Asian too. The debate I had among the Asians from my high school at our reunion was what percentage of our class was Asian back in 1985. The stats aren't readily available, but I think the number must have been somewhere between 5 and 10%, or in our case, 20 to 40 kids, which was still higher than the percentage of Asians in the US population at the time, but nowhere near the nearly 20% Asian we had in my freshman class at MIT. Number 9, it was fun to meet spouses. For those who don't remember, Marcia and I went to the same high school, and we might be the only ones from our class that married another member of the class. So it was super nice to be able to each go our own way and not worry about whether our spouse was having a good time. At the same time, I totally appreciate the spouses who did come to the reunion, curious to hear stories about their loved ones and their pasts. They were really good sports and also helped to add a fresh perspective to who our classmates became later in life. For full disclosure, Marcia and I have never had the discomfort of either attending a reunion or worrying about whether a spouse was having a good time or being the spouse who doesn't know everyone. All the MIT reunions that I attended were while we still had kids at home, so I'd go to Boston by myself and leave the family at home. The University of Washington was so big that Marcia never attended a reunion, choosing instead to just get together with select friends outside of any big events. But still, I would encourage everyone to bring spouses, and I encourage spouses to come. I think it adds a fun element to the event. And finally, number 10, going to the reunion made me feel more nostalgic. So before I got on to record this podcast, I actually hopped in the car earlier. I went to go look at my old elementary school, my old house, my old middle school, and my old high school. Then, of course, I had to stop by and have my favorite old fast food at Taco Time. So that was a nice diversion to the day. Thanks so much for joining me on these reflections. So that wraps it up for this week. And of course, if you like this new format, please feel free to hit subscribe to my Substack, or if you prefer, visit my links page at s.pow.name to find me on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Thanks again, and see you next week.